The blood-red sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty main street of Placitas, New Mexico territory. As Olivia Parker clutched her children's hands and stared at the empty stage that should have carried her husband home. The year was 1878, and with each passing minute, the sinking realization that Thomas wasn't coming back grew heavier in her chest. 3 children beside her, a dwindling purse in her pocket, and not a soul to turn to in this frontier town she'd only called home for 6 months. "Mama, where's Papa?" 5-year-old Emma tugged at her skirt, her innocent eyes reflecting the dying light. Olivia swallowed hard, forcing down the panic rising in her throat. "I don't know, sweetheart," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper as she shifted baby James higher on her hip. The stagecoach driver approached, hat in hand. "Mrs. Parker, I'm mighty sorry, but there's been no word of your husband since he left for Santa Fe 3 weeks back. Some say he was seen boarding a train east, but—" He trailed off, uncomfortable with delivering such news. 7-year-old William, her eldest, stood straighter beside her, chin jutting out in a way that made him look heartbreakingly like his father. "We don't need him anyway," he declared, though his bottom lip trembled slightly. "The boarding house wouldn't carry them another week without payment." The general store had already refused further credit. Olivia's throat tightened as she guided her children away from the stagecoach stop, unsure where to go but knowing they couldn't stay standing in the street as night fell. From the shadows of the livery stable across the way, Yancy Owens observed the small family. He'd seen this play out before in frontier towns, a man seeking adventure or fortune leaving his family to fend for themselves. The tall, broad-shouldered cowboy had been passing through Placitas on his way back to his ranch, 10 miles outside town, when the scene caught his attention. "Mr. Owens," Sheriff Miller nodded as he approached. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" Yancy adjusted his worn Stetson. "Thomas Parker finally showed his true colors, I reckon. Left her high and dry with 3 little ones," the sheriff confirmed. "Town's talking about sending them to the orphanage in Albuquerque. Shame, really. She's a good woman." Something in Yancy's chest tightened. He'd kept to himself since returning from the war, focusing on building his small cattle operation into something substantial. Human entanglements weren't part of his plan, especially not a ready-made family. "Where they staying tonight?" he found himself asking. "Mrs. Holbrook might let them have one more night at the boarding house out of charity, but after that—" The sheriff shrugged. Yancy watched as Olivia Parker straightened her back and led her children down the street, dignity intact despite the whispers that followed her. In that moment, something shifted inside him. "Sheriff," he said quietly, "tell Mrs. Parker I'd like a word with her tomorrow morning." The following dawn found Olivia sitting at the small table in her boarding house room, counting out her meager coins for the 3rd time. The total hadn't changed. Enough for maybe 2 days' worth of food, but not nearly enough for another week's lodging. A knock at the door startled her. William, already awake and dressed, ran to answer it before she could rise. "Madam," Sheriff Miller tipped his hat. "Hope I'm not disturbing you too early." "Not at all, Sheriff," Olivia replied, quickly tucking the coins back into her purse. "What can I do for you?" The sheriff glanced at William, then back to Olivia. "There's someone who'd like to speak with you. Yancy Owens owns the Double Circle Ranch outside town. He's waiting at my office whenever you're able, Mr. Owens." Olivia frowned slightly. "I don't believe I know him. Good man, keeps to himself mostly but fair in his dealings." The sheriff hesitated. "He might have a proposition that could help your situation, madam." After the sheriff left, Olivia dressed quickly, her mind racing. She'd heard the name Owens before, a successful rancher who'd turned a small inheritance into a respectable operation. Single, from what town gossip said. What could he possibly want with her? Emma and baby James were still sleeping, so she asked Mrs. Holbrook to watch them briefly while she and William walked to the sheriff's office. The man who stood when they entered was not what she expected. Tall and weathered, yes, but younger than she'd imagined, perhaps 30 to her 26 years. His eyes were a clear blue beneath his sandy hair, and while his face was serious, there was a gentleness in the way he acknowledged William with a nod. Mrs. Parker, he removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked hair. Appreciate you coming. I'm Yancy Owens. Sheriff Miller said you wished to speak with me. She kept her tone even though anxiety coursed through her veins. Yancy gestured to a chair. Yes, madam, I'll be direct. I understand your husband has left and you're in a difficult position. Olivia's cheeks flushed. Our situation is temporary, I'm sure. No disrespect intended, Yancy interrupted gently, but I've seen this before. Men who leave rarely return. William's small hand tightened in hers and Olivia fought the urge to cover his ears. I have a ranch, Yancy continued. Good land, sturdy house. I need someone to keep house, cook meals. You'd have your own rooms, you and your children. Food, shelter, and a small wage. Olivia blinked, trying to process his words. You're offering me employment, of sorts. Yancy shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable for the first time. Thing is, Mrs. Parker, a single woman with children working for a single man would cause talk, more talk than you're already facing. I don't understand what you're suggesting, Mr. Owens. Her heart hammered against her ribs. A marriage of convenience, he said bluntly. You'd have security. Your children would have a home, food, education when they're older. I'd have someone to tend the house and provide meals. William looked up at her, confusion clear on his young face. Olivia felt lightheaded. You don't even know me, she whispered. I know you've held your head high despite your circumstances. I know you've got 3 children you're trying to protect. He gestured to William. I know your boy there looks ready to fight the world to defend you, which speaks well of how you've raised him. Olivia stood abruptly. I can't possibly. We only just met. Yancy nodded, unsurprised by her reaction. I understand. It's a lot to consider. The offer stands for 3 days. After that, I'll be heading back to the ranch for the season. She turned to leave, then paused. Why would you do this? There must be unattached women who would make a more suitable wife. Something flickered in his eyes, pain, perhaps, or resignation. I'm not looking for love, Mrs. Parker. I had that once. What I need is order, stability. What you need is security. Seems a fair arrangement to me. Outside, the bright morning sun made Olivia squint. William tugged at her hand. What did that man want, Mama? He offered us a place to stay, sweetheart, on his ranch, with horses. William's eyes lit up. Yes, but... Olivia hesitated. How could she explain to a 7-year-old that the offer came with strings she wasn't sure she could accept? It's complicated, William. As they walked back to the boarding house, Olivia's thoughts churned. Marriage to a stranger seemed unthinkable. Yet the alternative, sending her children to an orphanage while she sought work as a seamstress or laundress, seemed equally impossible. That afternoon, after retrieving Emma and James from Mrs. Holbrook, Olivia took her children for a walk through town. Perhaps inspiration would strike, or an opportunity would present itself. Instead, she felt the weight of stares and whispers following them. Outside the general store, Mrs. Bennett, the shopkeeper's wife, stopped her. Olivia, dear, I heard about Thomas. Such a shame. Her eyes carried pity but no real compassion. If you're looking for work, the saloon is hiring girls, though I don't know if that would be suitable. The implication stung. Thank you, Mrs. Bennett, but I'll find something appropriate. Of course, dear, though with 3 little ones to feed. She glanced at the children. The orphanage in Albuquerque is quite humane, I'm told. They might take all three together, being siblings. Olivia felt William's hand tighten in hers. "We'll manage," she said firmly, hurrying away before tears could betray her. Later, as the children slept in their shared bed, Olivia sat by the window, staring at the stars. The options before her seemed impossible. Pride told her to refuse Yancy Owens's offer to find her own way. But what would pride feed her children? At dawn, she made her decision. Dressing carefully in her best though faded blue dress, she left the children with Mrs. Holbrook once more and walked to the livery where she'd heard Yancy Owens was collecting supplies before returning to his ranch. She found him loading sacks of feed onto a wagon. He straightened when he saw her, wiping his hands on his denims. "Mrs. Parker, Mr. Owens." She took a deep breath. "Your offer. Would my children be treated well?" Something softened in his expression. "I wouldn't have it any other way." "And we would have our own space, our own rooms," he nodded. "The house has 4 bedrooms, plenty of space." Olivia clasped her hands tightly. "I would expect fidelity, Mr. Owens, even in an arrangement such as this." A flash of surprise crossed his face, followed by respect. "Of course. I wouldn't propose otherwise." Then, she swallowed hard. "I accept your offer with one condition. I need to see the ranch first. I won't take my children somewhere sight unseen." Yancy considered this, then nodded. "Fair enough. I can take you out there today. Bring you back by sundown so you can decide." 2 hours later, Olivia sat beside Yancy on the wagon seat. The gentle sway of the vehicle and the rhythmic clip-clop of the horses' hooves filling the silence between them. They had spoken little since leaving town, each lost in their own thoughts about the arrangement they were considering. "Tell me about your children," Yancy finally said, breaking the silence as they traveled through a stretch of juniper and pine. Olivia's expression softened immediately. "William is 7. He's serious and responsible, always trying to be the man of the house, even before Thomas left." She hesitated, then continued. "Emma is 5, curious about everything, and James is just 15 months, still a baby really." Yancy nodded, keeping his eyes on the trail. "Good ages. Young enough to adapt." "They're not pets to be trained, Mr. Owens," Olivia said sharply, then bit her lip, wondering if she'd just ruined everything. To her surprise, Yancy chuckled. "No, madam, they certainly aren't. I meant no offense. I just meant they're young enough that this change might not be as difficult as it would be for older children." The tension in Olivia's shoulders eased slightly. "What about you, Mr. Owens? You mentioned you've known love before." His hands tightened on the reins. "Yes, during the war. She was a nurse in the field hospital where I recovered after Shiloh. We were to marry when I was well enough." His voice grew distant. "Cholera took her before we could." "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly, understanding his earlier words better now. "It was 8 years ago." His tone made it clear the subject was closed. They rounded a bend, and the landscape opened up before them. A valley stretched out, bordered by gentle hills, and a small creek that glinted in the sunlight. In the center stood a 2-story house, whitewashed and sturdy, with a covered porch wrapping around it. Several outbuildings dotted the property, and in the distance, cattle grazed in fenced pastures. "Double circle," Yancy announced, a hint of pride in his voice. "Not the biggest spread in the territory, but it's good land." Olivia couldn't help but be impressed. The house was larger than she'd expected, and everything about the property spoke of careful maintenance and hard work. As they drew closer, a Mexican man emerged from one of the outbuildings, raising his hand in greeting. "That's Miguel Vasquez," Yancy explained. "He and his wife Elena help run things. They have their own cabin on the property." Alina does some cooking and cleaning now, but she's expecting their third child and would welcome the help. They pulled up in front of the house, and Yancy helped Olivia down from the wagon. Up close, she could see that the house, while not new, had been well maintained. The porch was swept clean, and there were even a few flower boxes under the windows. "Alina's touch," Yancy said, following her gaze. "She said a house needs something living beside its occupants." Inside, the house was simple but comfortable. A large front room with a stone fireplace, a dining area, and a kitchen with a proper cook stove. Upstairs were the bedrooms, a large one for the master of the house, and 3 smaller but adequate rooms. "The children could share until they are older if you prefer," Yancy said, standing awkwardly in the hallway as Olivia inspected the rooms. "Or each have their own." Olivia ran her hand over a quilt on one of the beds. "This is more than I expected, Mr. Owens." "My mother believed in comfort," he replied. "Most of the furnishings were hers." They toured the rest of the property, the barn, the chicken coop, the vegetable garden that Alina tended. Throughout it all, Olivia noted the respect with which Miguel and Alina treated Yancy, and how he, in turn, spoke to them as valued members of the household rather than mere employees. As they prepared to return to town, Olivia stood on the porch, looking out over the land. It was beautiful in its own rugged way, and undeniably a safer, more secure place for her children than the uncertainty that awaited them in Placitas. "Would we be married before coming here?" she asked abruptly. Yancy, who had been checking the wagon's wheels, straightened. "Yes. I wouldn't bring you out here otherwise. People talk, and your reputation matters, especially with children." Olivia nodded slowly. "And when would this happen?" "Tomorrow, if you're willing. Judge Wilson can perform the ceremony. Simple, quick." He hesitated. "I have my mother's ring, if that would be acceptable." The reality of what she was considering hit Olivia with full force. Marriage to this man she barely knew. A new life on a ranch miles from town. Asking her children to accept a stranger as their stepfather. "Mr. Owens," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to be clear. I'm grateful for your offer, and I can see this would be a good home for my children, but I can't pretend this is a love match." Yancy approached the porch, stopping at the bottom step to look up at her. "I'm not asking for pretense, Mrs. Parker. I'm offering security and respect. Maybe in time there might be affection between us, but I don't expect what I had before, and I don't imagine you're eager to risk your heart again either." His honesty was both refreshing and painful. "No," she admitted. "I'm not." "Then we understand each other." He extended his hand as if to seal a business arrangement. "Do we have an agreement?" Olivia looked at his offered hand, strong, calloused from work, yet clean with neatly trimmed nails. A working man's hand, but one that took pride in his appearance. After a moment's hesitation, she placed her smaller hand in his. "Yes, Mr. Owens, we have an agreement." His hand was warm around hers, the grip firm but gentle. For just a moment, something passed between them, not romance, certainly, but perhaps the first tentative seed of trust. The following morning dawned clear and bright, as if the New Mexico sky was blessing their practical arrangement. Olivia dressed her children carefully, trying to explain in terms they could understand what was about to happen. "Mr. Owens has a nice ranch with horses and cows," she told them. "He's offered to let us live there." "Will Papa be there?" Emma asked, her eyes wide. Olivia's heart clenched. "No, sweetheart, your Papa has gone away. Mr. Owens has offered to help take care of us." William's brow furrowed. "Is he going to be our new Pa?" "He's going to be my husband," Olivia said carefully, "which makes him your stepfather, but he doesn't expect you to call him Pa unless you want to someday." "Does he like children?" William persisted, protective as always. Olivia hesitated. In truth, She had no idea how Yancy felt about children. He'd offered them shelter and security, but he'd never explicitly said he wanted to be a father figure. "I think he wants us all to be safe and have a good home," she finally answered. "The rest we'll figure out together." The ceremony at Judge Wilson's office was brief and devoid of sentiment. Yancy wore a clean shirt and his best denims, his hair slicked back with water. Olivia wore her blue dress again, a small bunch of wildflowers William had picked clutched in her trembling hands. Sheriff Miller and his wife served as witnesses. Mrs. Miller had kindly taken Emma and James to the side, entertaining them with a picture book while William stood solemnly beside his mother. "Do you, Yancy Owens, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Judge Wilson asked, his tone suggesting he was performing a routine legal transaction rather than joining two lives together. "I do," Yancy replied, his voice steady. "And do you, Olivia Parker, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Olivia swallowed, acutely aware of William's eyes on her. "I do." "Then, by the authority vested in me by the territory of New Mexico, I pronounce you husband and wife." Judge Wilson closed his book with a snap. "Mr. Owens, you may kiss your bride." An awkward moment followed. They hadn't discussed this part. Yancy looked at Olivia, a question in his eyes. She gave a slight nod, and he leaned forward to press a chaste kiss to her lips, brief, dry, and yet somehow not entirely unpleasant. "Congratulations," Sheriff Miller said, shaking Yancy's hand. "You've got yourself a fine family now." Mrs. Miller embraced Olivia. "He's a good man," she whispered. "Quiet but decent. You could have done worse." By noon, their few belongings were loaded onto Yancy's wagon, and they were leaving Placitas behind. Emma chattered excitedly about seeing the horses while James dozed in Olivia's arms. William sat between his mother and Yancy, his expression wary but curious. "Mr. Owens," he said suddenly as they passed the town limits, "do you know how to fish?" Yancy glanced down at the boy. "Yes, I do. The creek on our property has some decent trout. Would you like me to teach you?" William nodded, a tentative smile crossing his face. "Papa always said he would, but he was too busy." "Well, I'll find time," Yancy promised, his tone serious. "A boy should know how to fish." Olivia felt a rush of gratitude at this small kindness toward her son. Perhaps this arrangement would work after all. The journey back to the ranch seemed shorter this time, filled with Emma's questions and William's occasional comments. By the time they arrived, the sun was high overhead, casting short shadows across the yard. Elena Vasquez was waiting on the porch, a welcoming smile on her face. She was a plump woman in her 30s, her dark hair streaked with a few strands of gray, and her pregnancy evident beneath her apron. "Welcome, Senora Owens," she said warmly, coming forward to take Olivia's hand. "I have prepared a special meal to celebrate." Olivia found herself blushing at the new name Senora Owens. It felt strange, foreign on her tongue. "Thank you, Elena, that's very kind." "And these must be the little ones." Elena bent slightly to smile at Emma and William. "Such beautiful children. And the baby, may I?" She held out her arms for James, who surprisingly went to her without protest, charmed by her warm smile. Yancy was unloading the wagon with Miguel's help. "Take your things inside," he called to Olivia. "Elena will show you where everything goes." The meal was simple but delicious, a hearty stew with fresh bread and a special honey cake for dessert. The children, tired from the journey but excited by the new surroundings, ate well. Even James managed a few spoonfuls of stew before nodding off in Olivia's lap. As the afternoon waned, Elena showed Olivia around the kitchen and pantry, explaining where everything was kept. "Senor Yancy likes his coffee strong in the morning," she said, "and bread with every meal. He is not fussy, but he appreciates good cooking." Olivia nodded, mentally cataloging these details about the man who was now her husband. What else should I know about him? Elena considered this. He is fair and honest. He works hard, sometimes too hard. He does not talk much, but when he does, it is worth listening. She placed a hand on Olivia's arm. He has been alone too long, I think. It is good you are here now. By evening, the children were settled in their new rooms, William in one, Emma and James sharing another. Olivia stood awkwardly in the main bedroom, unsure of the sleeping arrangements. Yancy appeared in the doorway, a folded blanket in his arms. "I'll take the room at the end of the hall," he said. "This is yours now." Relief and confusion mingled in Olivia's chest. "But it's your room." "It's the master bedroom," he corrected. "And you're the lady of the house now." "Mr. Owens, Yancy," he interrupted. "If we're to live as husband and wife, even in name only, you should use my given name." "Yancy," she repeated, the name unfamiliar on her tongue. "I don't want to displace you from your own room," he shrugged. "The other room is comfortable enough, and this one has the larger bed for when the little one needs you in the night." His consideration touched her. "Thank you." He nodded once, then turned to leave. "Yancy," she called after him. He paused, looking back. "I'll do my best to be a good wife, to keep a good home for you." Something flickered in his eyes, warmth perhaps, or simple acknowledgement. "I know you will. Sleep well, Olivia." That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed in the quiet house, listening to the occasional creak of the settling timbers and the distant lowing of cattle, Olivia felt an odd mixture of fear and hope. She had married a stranger to secure her children's future. It wasn't the life she had imagined, but perhaps it could become something good in time. The days that followed established a new rhythm for the Parker children and their mother. Olivia rose early each morning to prepare breakfast before Yancy and Miguel headed out to work the cattle. Elena showed her the routines of the ranch house, how to manage the chickens, tend the vegetable garden, preserve foods for the coming winter. William followed Yancy like a shadow whenever he was allowed, absorbing knowledge about horses, cattle, and the land with a hunger that surprised everyone. Emma quickly became Elena's little helper, especially with preparations for the new baby. Even baby James seemed to thrive in the fresh air and open spaces of the ranch. 2 weeks after their arrival, Olivia was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard the sound of laughter. William's high, boyish tones mixed with a deeper rumble she barely recognized. She peered around the sheet she was hanging to see Yancy showing her son how to twirl a lariat, both of them grinning as the rope tangled around William's feet. "You're getting it," Yancy encouraged, untangling the rope. "It took me months to learn when I was your age." "Really?" William looked up at him with naked admiration. "Really? My pa wasn't half as patient a teacher as I'm trying to be." Yancy demonstrated the motion again. "See how I hold my wrist? Try it like that." Olivia watched, transfixed by this new side of Yancy. With her children, especially William, he showed a patience and gentleness she hadn't expected. He wasn't effusive or overly affectionate, but he was kind and steady, qualities her children desperately needed after their father's abandonment. That evening, after the children were asleep, Olivia found Yancy on the porch, smoking a pipe as he looked out over the darkened landscape. She brought him a cup of coffee and sat in the second rocking chair, a respectable distance away. "Thank you for being kind to William," she said after a comfortable silence. "It means a great deal to him." Yancy tapped his pipe against the porch rail. "He's a good boy, eager to learn." "His father never had much time for him," Olivia admitted. "Thomas was always chasing the next opportunity, the next big strike. There was always something more important than spending time with his son." Yancy's expression darkened slightly. "Some men aren't cut out to be fathers. And you?" The question slipped out before Olivia could think better of it. He looked at her, surprise evident in his features. I never thought much about it. After Caroline died, I figured that path wasn't meant for me. Caroline was your fiancée, he nodded, his eyes distant. She would have made a wonderful mother, always talking about the children we'd have someday. He fell silent for a moment. Your children are lucky to have you. You're a good mother, Olivia. The compliment warmed her. I try to be. They sat in companionable silence as the stars emerged overhead. For the first time since arriving at the ranch, Olivia felt truly at ease in Yancy's presence. I should tell you, he said suddenly. I'll be gone for a few days next week. Need to drive some cattle to the railhead in Las Vegas. Oh. Olivia tried to hide her momentary alarm at the thought of being left alone. Will Miguel be here? Yancy nodded. He'll stay to help with the ranch chores. Elena will be here too, of course. He hesitated. Will you be all right? Of course, she said quickly, not wanting to seem dependent. We'll manage fine. He studied her face, seeming to see through her forced confidence. I wouldn't go if it wasn't necessary, but we need the sale to get through winter. I understand. And she did. This was his livelihood, their livelihood now. How long will you be gone? 4 days, maybe 5 if the weather turns. He knocked the ashes from his pipe. I'll make sure everything is in order before I leave. True to his word, Yancy spent the days before his departure ensuring the ranch was prepared for his absence. He repaired a leak in the roof, split extra firewood, and made sure the smokehouse was stocked with freshly cured meat. He even found time to take William fishing as promised, returning triumphantly with 3 fat trout for dinner. The morning of his departure came too quickly. Olivia rose before dawn to prepare a hearty breakfast and pack food for his journey. She found him in the barn, saddling his horse and checking the gear for the small herd he and his hired hands would drive to the railhead. I made you some biscuits and jerky for the trail, she said, holding out the wrapped package. Yancy looked surprised and pleased. Thank you, that's thoughtful. An awkward moment followed. They had settled into a comfortable routine over the past weeks, but there was still a careful distance between them. Neither seemed quite sure how to navigate a goodbye. Be safe, Olivia finally said, clutching her shawl against the pre-dawn chill. Yancy nodded, securing the food in his saddlebag. I'll send word if I'm delayed. He hesitated, then added, take care of yourself and the children. It wasn't until he had mounted his horse and ridden away with the other men that Olivia realized he had left something on the hay bale near where she stood, a small revolver with a box of ammunition. Miguel will check on you daily, Yancy had written on a scrap of paper beside it, but a woman alone should be able to protect herself and her children if need be. The first 2 days of Yancy's absence passed uneventfully. Olivia kept busy with household chores, and the children seemed to adjust well to the temporary change in routine. Miguel checked in each morning and evening as promised, and Elena visited daily, bringing fresh tortillas and continuing Olivia's education in managing a ranch household. On the 3rd day, a storm blew in from the mountains, sudden and violent, with crashing thunder that frightened the children and rain so heavy it turned the yard to mud within minutes. Olivia hustled everyone inside, settling Emma and James with toys in the front room while she checked windows to ensure they were securely latched against the driving rain. When she reached the kitchen, she found water seeping under the back door and pooling on the floor. Grabbing a mop and bucket, she worked quickly to stem the flow, stuffing rags along the doorframe to block the water. The storm raged for hours, lightning illuminating the darkened house in brief, brilliant flashes. By sunset, Emma was in tears from the thunder, and even William looked pale and frightened. Olivia gathered them all in the master bedroom, making a nest of blankets where they could huddle together, telling stories to distract them from the howling wind and pounding rain. She had just managed to get James to sleep when a loud crash from outside startled them all. "What was that?" William whispered, eyes wide. "Probably just a branch down," Olivia soothed, though her heart was racing. "Stay here with Emma and James. I'm going to check." Lighting a lantern, she made her way downstairs, the revolver Yancy had left clutched in her free hand. The crash had come from the direction of the barn. If the roof had been damaged, the horses might be in danger. Pulling on Yancy's old slicker that hung by the door, Olivia steeled herself to venture into the storm. The rain had slackened somewhat, but the wind still howled, bending the trees around the property. She had just reached for the door handle when a pounding on the front door made her jump. For a terrifying moment she stood frozen, the revolver shaking in her hand. Then a familiar voice called out, "Senora Owens, it is Miguel." Relief flooded her as she hurried to unlock the door. Miguel stood on the porch, drenched and breathless. "The barn roof," he gasped. "Part has collapsed." "We must move the horses." Without hesitation, Olivia nodded. "Let me check on the children, then I'll help." Upstairs, she found William already dressed, pulling on his boots. "I heard Miguel," he said determinedly. "I can help with the horses." "William, it's too dangerous, Mama. I'm not a baby. The horses need help." Looking at her son's resolute face, Olivia saw a glimpse of the man he would someday become. "All right, but you stay right with Miguel or me, understand?" Together they raced to the barn through the driving rain. One corner of the roof had indeed collapsed, allowing water to pour in. The horses were whinnying in distress, stamping their hooves nervously. "We must get them to the small corral," Miguel shouted over the storm. "It has shelter on one side." For the next hour, Olivia, William, and Miguel worked to lead the frightened horses to safety, soothing them with gentle words and sure hands. By the time they finished, all three were soaked to the skin and exhausted, but the animals were secure. Back in the house, Olivia sent William upstairs to change into dry clothes while she made hot chocolate. Miguel accepted a cup gratefully before insisting he needed to return to his cabin to check on Alina. "You have done well, Senora," he said with respect. "Senor Yancy will be proud of how you handled this." After he left, Olivia checked on the children, all three now asleep in her big bed, exhausted by the excitement. She changed into a dry nightgown and robe, then sat by the fire, sipping her cooling chocolate and watching the storm gradually subside. For the first time since Thomas's abandonment, she felt a surge of pride in herself. She had protected her children, saved the horses, and maintained her composure through a crisis. This life, so different from what she had known before, was perhaps making her stronger than she had realized. The following morning dawned clear and cool, the storm having spent its fury overnight. Olivia rose early to assess the damage in daylight. The barn roof would need repairs, and several trees had lost limbs, but overall, the ranch had weathered the storm reasonably well. Miguel arrived as she was making breakfast, bringing news that the creek had risen significantly and might make travel difficult for a day or two. "Senor Yancy may be delayed in his return," he warned. Olivia nodded, a slight worry creasing her brow. "He'll be all right, though. He knows this land well. He will find safe passage." Miguel hesitated. "But if you wish, I can ride toward Las Vegas tomorrow to look for him." "No," Olivia decided after a moment's thought. "We need you here to help with repairs. Yancy will come when he can." The day passed in a flurry of activity, clearing debris, patching what they could of the barn roof, and salvaging vegetables from the garden that had survived the storm. William worked alongside Miguel with determined energy, clearly proud to be treated as one of the men. Even Emma helped, collecting fallen branches for firewood under Olivia's watchful eye. By evening, much of the immediate damage had been addressed, though the barn would need more substantial repairs when Yancy returned. Tired but satisfied with their progress, Olivia prepared a hearty stew for dinner, setting aside a portion for Miguel to take to Alina. As darkness fell, she sat on the porch, listening to the chorus of frogs and insects that had emerged after the rain. The children were already asleep, worn out from the day's exertions. The night was peaceful after the previous day's chaos, the stars brilliant in the clear sky. A movement at the edge of the property caught her eye, a rider, moving slowly toward the house. For a moment, fear clutched at her heart, but as the figure drew closer, recognition dawned. "Yancy," she whispered, rising to her feet. He looked exhausted, his clothes mud-splattered and his face drawn with fatigue. His horse seemed equally tired, head hanging low as they approached. Olivia hurried down the porch steps to meet him. "Are you all right? We worried when the storm came through." Yancy dismounted stiffly, wincing slightly. "Got caught in the worst of it on the way back. Creeks running high, had to find another crossing." He looked toward the barn, noting the damaged roof. "Looks like you had trouble here too." A section of the barn roof collapsed, but we managed to get the horses out. Miguel has already started repairs. Something that might have been admiration flickered in Yancy's eyes. "You handled it then?" "We did," Olivia confirmed, a note of pride in her voice. "William was a tremendous help." Yancy nodded, a ghost of a smile crossing his tired face. "That doesn't surprise me." He reached for his saddlebags, then grimaced, his hand going to his side. Olivia noticed immediately. "You're hurt." "It's nothing. Took a fall when my horse was spooked by lightning. Just bruised." "Let me see," Olivia insisted, her motherly instincts taking over. When he hesitated, she added more firmly, "Yancy Owens, you're dead on your feet and clearly in pain. Let me help you inside, and then I'm going to check those ribs." Too tired to argue, Yancy allowed her to help him stable his horse, then guide him into the house. In the kitchen, she sat him at the table, placed a bowl of reheated stew in front of him, and put water on to boil for tea. "Eat first," she instructed. "Then I'll look at those ribs." He ate mechanically, hunger overcoming discomfort. When he'd finished, Olivia led him to the sitting room and indicated he should remove his shirt. An ugly bruise spread across his left side, the skin already turning purple and yellow. Olivia pressed gently along his ribs, noting when he flinched. "I don't think anything's broken," she said finally. "But you've got some nasty bruising. I'll make a poultice to draw out the inflammation." While the water heated, she gathered herbs from the kitchen arnica and comfrey that Alina had shown her in the garden. Grinding them into a paste, she added hot water to make a thick poultice, then spread it on a clean cloth. Returning to the sitting room, she found Yancy leaning back in the chair, eyes closed. He looked vulnerable without his shirt, his usual reserve softened by exhaustion. The lamplight illuminated old scars on his chest and shoulder, remnants of his war service, she assumed. "This will help with the pain and swelling," she said softly, pressing the warm poultice to his injured side. "Hold it there while I wrap a bandage around to keep it in place." As she worked, wrapping the long strip of cloth around his torso, Olivia was acutely aware of his breath on her hair, the warmth of his skin beneath her fingertips. This was the closest they had been since their brief wedding kiss, and she found herself unexpectedly flustered by his proximity. "There," she said finally, securing the bandage. "That should help. You should rest now." Yancy caught her wrist gently as she started to move away. "Thank you," he said, his voice low, "for this and for taking care of things while I was gone." The simple gratitude in his eyes made Olivia's breath catch. "You're welcome," she replied softly. "That's what we agreed to, isn't it? To help each other, his gaze held hers for a long moment. Yes, he finally said. That's what we agreed. Something shifted between them in that moment, a subtle change neither was quite ready to acknowledge. But as Olivia helped him upstairs to his room, her hand supporting his arm, both were aware that their arrangement had somehow deepened beyond the purely practical terms they had originally set. The weeks that followed brought changes to the Owens household. The barn was repaired, the cattle sale had been successful, and preparations for winter began in earnest. Firewood was stacked, vegetables and fruits preserved, meat smoked and salted. The rhythm of ranch life continued, with each day bringing new tasks and challenges. October arrived with crisp mornings and golden afternoons. Alina gave birth to a healthy baby boy, whom she and Miguel named Antonio. The arrival of the new baby fascinated Emma and even William, while giving Olivia a chance to share her knowledge of infant care with the new mother. Throughout it all, Olivia observed subtle changes in Yancy. He smiled more often, especially around the children. He began joining them for evening meals rather than eating quickly and returning to work. Sometimes he even read to Emma and William before bedtime, his deep voice bringing adventure stories to life. One evening in late October, Olivia found Yancy in the barn, carving something from a piece of wood. Curious, she approached quietly, watching as his hands skillfully shaped the material. "What are you making?" she finally asked. He looked up, slightly startled. "A horse," he admitted, showing her the half-finished carving. "Thought William might like it for his birthday." Olivia's heart twisted. "How did you know his birthday is coming? He mentioned it a while back, said he'd be 8 on the 15th. Yancy returned to his carving. "Thought he deserved something special. Boy's been working hard around here." "That's very thoughtful," Olivia said softly, touched by his consideration. "He'll love it." Yancy shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. "Just a small thing." "No," Olivia disagreed. "It's not small at all. It shows you were listening, that you care." She hesitated, then added, "His father never remembered his birthday." Yancy's hand stilled. "Then his father was a fool," he said quietly. The simple statement, delivered without drama or emphasis, cemented something in Olivia's heart. This man, this quiet, reserved cowboy who had married her out of practical necessity, had more genuine care for her children than their own father had ever shown. William's birthday was celebrated with a special dinner, Alina's chocolate cake, and presents the carved horse from Yancy, which William immediately declared was the best present ever. A new shirt Olivia had sewn, and a small leather pouch Miguel had made for collecting treasures. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Olivia found Yancy on the porch in his usual spot. Without waiting for an invitation, she sat in the chair beside him. "Thank you for making William's day so special," she said. "I haven't seen him this happy in a long time." Yancy nodded, puffing on his pipe. "Boy deserves to be happy. All your children do." He glanced at her. "You too, Olivia." The simple statement caught her off guard. "I am happy," she said after a moment. "Happier than I expected to be when we made our arrangement." Something shifted in Yancy's expression, a softening around his eyes. "I'm glad to hear it." Emboldened by the moment, Olivia continued, "When you first proposed this marriage, I thought it would be just a practical arrangement. Security for my children in exchange for keeping your house. I never expected." "What?" Yancy prompted when she trailed off. "I never expected to feel at home here," she admitted. "To feel that we might become a real family." Yancy was quiet for so long that Olivia began to regret her words. Had she misread the situation? Perhaps he was content with their arrangement as it was, with the careful distance they maintained. "When Caroline died," he finally said, his voice low, I thought that was the end of any chance for a family of my own. I built this place, focused on making it successful, told myself that was enough. He tapped his pipe against the rail. It wasn't. Olivia's heart quickened. And now his eyes met hers, and for once she could clearly read the emotion in them. Now I find myself hoping for things I'd given up on. The confession hung in the air between them, delicate and fraught with possibility. Neither seemed quite ready to take the next step, to put into explicit words the feelings that had been growing steadily over the past months. "It's getting cold," Yancy said finally, standing and tapping out his pipe. "We should go in." Olivia nodded, rising to join him. At the doorway he paused, his hand hovering near her arm but not quite touching. "Olivia," he began, then stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "I'm glad you agreed to my proposal, more glad than I can say." It wasn't a declaration of love, but in that moment it felt like one. Olivia smiled up at him, warmth spreading through her chest. "So am I, Yancy, so am I." As November arrived, bringing colder weather and the first dusting of snow to the higher elevations, life on the ranch settled into a winter rhythm. There were still cattle to tend, repairs to make, but the pace slowed somewhat, allowing for longer evenings by the fire and more time together as a family. Yancy began teaching William to play checkers, while Emma helped Olivia with simple sewing projects. Baby James, now nearly 18 months old, toddled around the house, getting into everything and charming everyone with his infectious giggle. The change in sleeping arrangements happened gradually, without explicit discussion. First, Yancy began lingering in the sitting room after the children were in bed, talking with Olivia about the day's events or plans for the ranch. Sometimes they would sit in companionable silence, she with her mending, he with a book or his pipe. One evening, as the first serious snowfall of the season blanketed the ranch in white, Yancy helped Olivia bank the fire for the night. When they reached the top of the stairs, he hesitated outside her bedroom door. "It's going to be cold tonight," he said quietly, mindful of the sleeping children. "If you'd like, I could stay, just to keep warm," he added quickly. Olivia looked up at him, reading the uncertainty in his eyes. They had been married for nearly 3 months, but had never shared a bed. What he was offering wasn't passion, but closeness, a step toward the real marriage they had both begun to want. "I'd like that," she said softly. That night, they lay side by side in the big bed, a respectable few inches between them, both acutely aware of the other's presence. Eventually, Olivia drifted off to sleep, only to wake sometime in the night to find Yancy's arm draped protectively over her waist, his breathing deep and even against her hair. Instead of moving away, she nestled closer, drawing comfort from his warmth. It felt right, somehow. Natural, in a way she hadn't expected. From that night on, they shared the master bedroom. Nothing more physical than sleeping close had occurred, but the emotional barrier between them had definitely lowered. Yancy began touching her casually throughout the day, a hand at the small of her back, fingers brushing as he passed her something, a gentle squeeze of her shoulder in passing. As Thanksgiving approached, Olivia threw herself into preparations for their first holiday as a family. Elena taught her to make traditional tamales alongside the turkey and pies that Olivia's mother had always prepared. The day before Thanksgiving, a supply wagon arrived from town with goods Yancy had ordered: flour, sugar, coffee, and a few small luxuries. Among the items was a package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string, which Yancy handed to Olivia with an almost shy expression. "What's this?" she asked, surprised. "Just a small gift, for our first Thanksgiving together." Curious, Olivia untied the string and unwrapped the package. Inside was a beautiful woolen shawl in shades of deep blue and purple, soft to the touch and finely made. "Yancy," she breathed, running her fingers over the lovely fabric. "It's beautiful. Reminded me of your eyes," he said, looking slightly embarrassed at the admission. "Thought you might like something pretty for yourself, not just practical things." The thoughtfulness of the gift brought unexpected tears to Olivia's eyes. How long had it been since someone had given her something simply to bring her pleasure? Thomas had occasionally brought trinkets home, but always as a way to smooth over an absence or distract from broken promises. "Thank you," she said, wrapping the shawl around her shoulders. "I love it." Impulsively, she reached up to kiss his cheek. Yancy turned his head slightly at the same moment, and their lips met instead, a brief, startled touch that neither had quite intended. For a heartbeat, they froze, eyes wide. Then Yancy's hand came up to cup her cheek, and he kissed her, properly gentle but deliberate, his lips warm and sure against hers. When they separated, Olivia was breathless, her heart pounding in her chest. Yancy looked equally affected, his eyes darker than usual as they gazed down at her. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted, his voice rough. "Why didn't you?" she whispered. His thumb traced a gentle path along her jawline. "Wasn't sure you'd welcome it, our arrangement. I didn't want to assume." Olivia leaned into his touch. "I think our arrangement has been changing for some time now, hasn't it?" A slow smile spread across Yancy's face, the most unguarded expression she had yet seen from him. "I believe it has." The sound of small feet pattering down the stairs broke the moment. Emma appeared, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Mama, I'm thirsty." Yancy stepped back, but his eyes promised a continuation of their conversation later. Olivia went to tend to her daughter, the new shawl still wrapped around her shoulders and the warmth of Yancy's kiss lingering on her lips. Thanksgiving Day brought a light snowfall and a house full of delicious aromas. Miguel, Elena, and baby Antonio joined them for the feast, bringing additional dishes and warm companionship. The table was crowded but merry, with even William losing some of his usual seriousness as he entertained them all with a story about chasing a wayward chicken. After the meal, while the children played a game Elena had taught them, the adults lingered at the table, sipping coffee and talking quietly. Miguel spoke of his hopes for expanding their small herd in the spring, while Elena shared news from her sister in Santa Fe. "And you, Senora Olivia," Elena said with a knowing smile, "you are settling well into ranch life, yes. Being a wife suits you." Olivia felt a blush rise to her cheeks, especially when Yancy's hand found hers under the table, their fingers interlacing. "Yes," she said softly, "I believe it does." That night, after their guests had departed and the children were tucked into bed, Olivia and Yancy stood together on the porch, watching the snow fall silently in the moonlight. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Yancy murmured, his arm around her waist. Olivia agreed, leaning against him. "Everything looks so peaceful, so clean." They stood in comfortable silence for a few minutes, then Yancy turned to face her, his expression serious. "Olivia, I need to say something." He took both her hands in his. "When I proposed our arrangement, I meant every word. I wasn't looking for love. Thought that part of my life was over." Her heart stuttered, uncertain where this was leading. "But these past months," he continued, "watching you with your children, seeing your strength and kindness, something changed." His hands tightened gently around hers. "I find myself feeling things I never expected to feel again." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. "Yancy, I love you," he said simply. "Not just as the mother of the children I've come to care for or as the woman who makes my house a home. I love you, Olivia Owens. Only you." Tears sprang to her eyes, blurring her vision. "I thought I'd never trust a man again after Thomas left," she whispered. "I was so afraid of being hurt, of my children being hurt, but you." She reached up to touch his face. "You showed me what a real man, a good man, can be. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you too." The kiss that followed was deeper, more passionate than their earlier one, a seal on the feelings they had finally acknowledged. When they broke apart, Yancy rested his forehead against hers. "I want us to be a real family," he said softly. "Not just in name, but in truth, if you're willing." "I am," Olivia replied without hesitation. "Very willing." They returned to the house hand in hand, the winter night forgotten in the warmth of newfound love and the promise of a true marriage at last. The transition from marriage of convenience to love match brought changes both subtle and profound to the Owens household. The most immediate and private change occurred that Thanksgiving night, when Yancy and Olivia truly became husband and wife in every sense. Their first intimate encounter was tender and unhurried, both of them a little nervous but eager to express physically the love they had verbally declared. "You're beautiful," Yancy whispered as he carefully unbuttoned her nightgown, his calloused fingers surprisingly gentle against her skin. Olivia, who had known only Thomas's hasty lovemaking, was unprepared for the patience and consideration Yancy showed her, his determination to ensure her pleasure before his own, the way he held her afterward as if she were precious. "I never knew it could be like this," she confessed in the quiet darkness, her head pillowed on his chest. He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Like what? So complete, as if we truly became one person." His arms tightened around her. "That's how it should be between a husband and wife who love each other." The days that followed brought a new ease to their relationship. The careful distance they had maintained dissolved, replaced by casual touches, shared smiles, and tender moments stolen throughout the day. The children noticed the change immediately. "Are you and Mr. Yancy really married now?" Emma asked one morning as Olivia braided her hair. Olivia's hands stilled. "We've been married since we came to the ranch, sweetheart. You know that." Emma twisted to look up at her. "But before you were pretend married. Now you're real married, I can tell." Children's perception never failed to amaze Olivia. "What makes you say that? You smile at each other different, and he kisses you when he thinks we're not looking." Emma's expression turned hopeful. "Does that mean he's our papa now?" The question caught Olivia off guard. "Well, he's your stepfather, but what you call him is up to you and him to decide together." That evening she related the conversation to Yancy as they prepared for bed. "Would you mind?" she asked hesitantly. "If they wanted to call you Papa or Pa?" "I know it's a lot to take on. I'd be honored," Yancy interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. "More than honored, but only if they want to and only when they're ready." December brought preparations for Christmas, the first real Christmas the Parker children would have since their father left. Yancy threw himself into the celebration with unexpected enthusiasm, riding into town to purchase gifts and bringing home a small pine tree to decorate. William approached him one afternoon as he was chopping wood. "Mr. Yancy, can you help me with something?" "Of course, son. What do you need?" William scuffed his boot in the snow. "I want to make something for Mama for Christmas, but I don't know how." Yancy considered this. "What sort of something were you thinking?" "Something pretty. Like a picture frame maybe, for the photograph of us all that Mr. Rodriguez took at Thanksgiving." "That's a fine idea," Yancy nodded approvingly. "I've got some wood scraps that would work well. We could start this afternoon if you like." The boy's face lit up. "Really? You'll teach me?" "That's what Pa," Yancy caught himself. "That's what I'm here for, to teach you things and help you grow up strong." William studied him for a long moment, his young face serious. "Ma says you're our stepfather now." "That's right. But that's a big word. Could I just call you Pa instead?" "If you don't mind," Yancy had to clear his throat before he could answer. "I'd like that very much, William, if you're sure." The boy nodded decisively. I'm sure you're a good pa. Better than my real one was. That evening, when William addressed him as Pa at the dinner table, Yancy caught Olivia's eye over the children's heads. The joy and gratitude in her expression mirrored his own feelings exactly. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, with fresh snow blanketing the ranch. The children woke early, their excited voices carrying down the hallway as Olivia and Yancy lay wrapped in each other's arms. "Ready for the stampede," Yancy murmured against her hair. Olivia laughed softly. "As ready as I'll ever be." Sure enough, moments later their bedroom door burst open and 3 pajama-clad children tumbled in. Emma and William bounded onto the bed while James toddled behind, arms raised to be lifted up. "It's Christmas," Emma announced unnecessarily. "Can we open presents?" "Please." Yancy scooped James onto the bed, settling him between himself and Olivia. "I don't know," he teased. "Have you all been good?" "Yes," the older children chorused while James nodded vigorously, though he clearly had no idea what he was agreeing to. "Well, in that case," Yancy said seriously, "I suppose we'd better see what Santa brought, hadn't we?" The next hour was a whirlwind of torn paper, excited exclamations, and grateful hugs. William proudly presented the frame he and Yancy had made, now holding the family photograph. Emma had drawn pictures for everyone, carefully rolled and tied with ribbons. Even James had been helped to make handprints on paper for his gifts. The children's presents from Yancy and Olivia were modest but thoughtful: a new jacket for William, a doll with real hair for Emma, and wooden blocks for James. But the true gift, Olivia realized as she watched her children playing happily while Yancy stoked the fire, was the family they had become. Later, after the children were occupied with their new toys, Yancy took Olivia's hand and led her to the porch, where they could have a moment alone. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small box. "Something I should have given you months ago." Inside the box was a gold band set with a small diamond, nestled beside the simple gold band she already wore, his mother's ring, given as part of their arrangement. "Yancy," she breathed, "it's beautiful." "This one isn't about practicality or appearances," he said, taking the diamond ring from the box. "This is because I love you and want the world to know it." He slid the ring onto her finger beside the first one. "Consider it a proposal, a real one this time. Olivia Parker Owens, will you continue being my wife, not because you need security or I need a housekeeper, but because we love each other?" Tears blurred her vision as she threw her arms around his neck. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "1,000 times yes." Their kiss was interrupted by giggles from the doorway. They turned to find all 3 children watching them. Emma with her hands clasped in delight, William trying to look disgusted but failing, and James simply mimicking his siblings' interest. "Come here, you little spies," Yancy called, opening his arms. The children rushed forward and he gathered them all into a family embrace, Olivia included. "Mama has agreed to keep me as her husband," he told them solemnly. "Which means I get to stay as your pa. How does that sound?" "Good," Emma declared immediately. "Now we can be a forever family." "A forever family," Yancy repeated, meeting Olivia's eyes over the children's heads. "I like the sound of that." Spring came early to New Mexico that year, bringing with it new beginnings and renewed hope. The ranch flourished under Yancy's careful management and Olivia's practical support. The cattle herd increased with a successful calving season, and the vegetable garden Olivia planted with Alina's help promised a bountiful harvest. One warm April evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Olivia leaned against Yancy's shoulder with a contented sigh. "Happy?" he asked, his arm secure around her waist. "Very." She placed her hand over his. I never imagined when you made your offer that day in the sheriff's office that we would end up here." Yancy chuckled. "I certainly didn't plan it this way, but I'm mighty glad it worked out as it did." Olivia hesitated, then said, "I have news." Something in her tone made him turn to look at her. "What kind of news?" She took his hand and placed it gently on her still flat abdomen. "The kind that means our family will be growing come November." For a moment, Yancy stared at her in disbelief. Then a slow, radiant smile spread across his face. "A baby, our baby," Olivia nodded, her own smile mirroring his. "Dr. Richardson confirmed it yesterday when I was in town. Are you pleased?" In answer, Yancy pulled her into his arms, burying his face against her neck. When he finally drew back, Olivia was startled to see tears in his eyes. "Please doesn't begin to cover it," he said hoarsely. "When Caroline died, I thought I'd lost my chance at having children of my own. Then you and your little ones came along, and I found myself a father in all but blood. And now," he placed his hand reverently over her stomach again, "now God has seen fit to bless us even more. The children will be excited," Olivia said, leaning into his embrace. "Especially Emma. She's been asking for a baby sister since Antonio was born." Yancy laughed. "And if it's a boy, she'll adapt. She already has 2 brothers, after all." They sat in comfortable silence as the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky. Inside the house, they could hear William reading aloud to Emma and James. The older boy had taken his responsibilities as big brother seriously, especially since Yancy had begun teaching him to read more fluently. "Did I ever tell you," Yancy said suddenly, "that the first time I saw you standing beside that stage coach with your children, I thought you were the bravest woman I'd ever seen?" Olivia looked up at him, surprised. "Brave? I felt anything but brave that day. I was terrified." "That's what makes it bravery," he said simply. "Being afraid but doing what needs to be done anyway." His hand stroked her hair gently. "I admired you before I loved you." The admission warmed her heart. "And I respected you before I loved you. You offered us a home when you had no obligation to do so." "Best decision I ever made," Yancy murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Come on, let's go tell the children about the baby." The news was met with varying reactions: Emma's delighted squeals, William's thoughtful consideration, and James's cheerful repetition of the word baby, though he clearly didn't understand what it meant. That night, as the household settled into sleep, Olivia lay in Yancy's arms, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From abandonment to security, from practical arrangement to deep love, from uncertainty to a future bright with promise, it had been a transformation neither of them could have predicted that fateful day in Placitas. "Stay with me," Yancy had said, offering her a hearth and home when she had nowhere to turn. "Forever," she whispered now in the darkness, her hand finding his in silent gratitude for the man who had become not just her husband, but her heart's true companion. Yancy's arm tightened around her in response, his lips brushing her forehead in a tender caress that spoke of enduring love and the lifetime they would share, raising their children in the home they had built together, not just of timber and adobe, but of trust, respect, and unwavering devotion. And as Olivia drifted toward sleep, secure in her husband's embrace, she knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings could lead to the most beautiful destinies, if one had the courage to take that first uncertain step toward a new life, and the faith to believe in second chances at love.